This is Beyond with Heather Tesh, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everyone. My guest today is Roland Walters. Roland, I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here as well.
We met at the IONS conference. You had a really neat healing session that I went to, and we're going to talk more about that in part 2. And also in part 2, you're actually going to give a healing to everybody listening. So I hope everybody tunes in for the next episode. But right now, what I want to do is start at the beginning. And you had a near-death experience at age 4. You didn't remember it, though, until you were in hypnotherapy. But take us back to that at age 4 and tell us about your near-death experience.
Okay. It was the summer. I turned 5 later that summer, so it was in that summer. So I hadn't turned 5 yet, but grew up on a dairy farm. I've always been part of farming in my life, and we had these things called in-ground silos, which essentially is a in-ground open top bunker for storing forages in. Dirt walls, concrete floor, and I was playing around on the top wall and. Anyway, short of the story is I fell head first into this concrete bunker, head first I was told I went down like a missile head first onto the concrete. No arms out or anything. I remember the dirt wall going by, in that split second. I still remember that to this day. And, apparently it completely knocked me out or took my life or something in that split moment. But, my brother was off to the side, forking literally with a pitchfork forages into a trailer. And I guess my mom was off to the other side over by where the cows are at. And what I remember is like, I hit and then I was out. And then it's like it was this warm yellow light feeling that pulled me up. And I could see back at my brother, and then I could hear my mom off in the distance screaming, "Don't touch him, don't touch him." And then all of a sudden the two of them were like both beside me, and I guess she was getting to pick me up or something. It was like a quick flash of just seeing them two and me, my body there. And then it was like my attention got changed when the warm feeling kept kind of going up in an angle. It wasn't going straight up. It was going up in an angle. It was very much this yellow, almost like a sunset type of yellow around me. And then all of a sudden the scene changed and I'm in the car where my parents, it was an old car had the bench front seat, solid bench front seat, vinyl seat. And I could see from the top of the car, my head was in my mom's lap, my feet was in my dad's lap. And he was driving. And I could see those two scenes. And then all of a sudden the scene changed. I'm like in the middle of nowhere. I can't really say it was like darkness, but it wasn't very bright. It was just in the middle of nowhere, almost like a starry night kind of a thing. It was huge. It was like nothing around. And I could still look back and see my parents, but they were getting further away. It's like I was getting further away from them, and it's when I realized that I was being pulled. So when I turned and looked, there was a man pulling me that had my left hand. So literally it's like I'm being pulled, kind of going backwards. And, the instant feeling was kind of a panic, because I'm being pulled by somebody, somewhere I don't even know where I'm at, by somebody who I don't know, and I'm going away from my parents. And of course, I'm a little kid. Well, that kind of proceeded for quite a while. Like he's pulling my hand, and initially I don't know how hard or whatever, but I know I was pulling back, and he just kind of kept pulling, and he had a good grip on me, kept pulling. But there was it was during that early stage of this whole thing. There was a lot of uneasiness, uncertainty, some fear, but yet at the same time, I could feel the calmness in his hand. And it wasn't. He wasn't projecting any kind of fear or anything himself. It was just he was calm, steady, and just walking. So, basically mixed feelings. And I got this feeling, in my mind, it was like he wanted to go. Well, I wanted to let go. And, where am I going? Just anything a person or a kid would say, he was being kind of pulled away, so to speak. I don't know how far we went or how long it went. It was time didn't really make a difference, but it was going for a while. Then all of a sudden he stopped and turned to me and says, "You're not done." I had no clue what this means or anything. It's just, you're not done. And in that moment, I got a chance to just kind of look around. I looked at him, and he's got dark complexion, dark hair, not very long. It's not real short either, but it's not very long. Relatively curly. He's wearing very plain, tan, loose clothing. It's just a guy. I mean, he's very dark complexion. And he turns around and keeps pulling me. And once again, I don't feel like I'm being like forcefully pulled. It's kind of like, like a parent pulling you, just encourage the kid to come along, and the kid's busy looking at everything else. The further we went, the calmer I got. I still had 1,000 questions running in my head. What's going on? Why am I here? What's happening? But fortunately, I mean, in the beginning, it was very uneasy, very scary. So as we got going, it became a situation. I started seeing people. I started watching him more, and because there was really nothing behind, and then started seeing these people come up, or what looked like people. Dark colors, some were gray, not like black, but just dark blues, dark greens, really, really dark colors. And they didn't show any brightness or any like happiness or anything. And this, I could see them from way off in the distance from both sides. It was coming, and it's like as we got closer, they were coming, and I could see 5 or 6, and then it was 10, and then all of a sudden it was 20, and then it just kept getting more and more and more. And to the point through this whole process, it was more than you can see. It was just the waves and waves of these individuals and he ended up using the word souls. And honestly, I don't even know if I knew what that was, at that time. I doubt seriously I did. And, it was another thing. It's like, what does this mean? It looks like people. As we were walking along, and it got to the point where I was walking with him, but he's still holding on to me, they kept getting closer and closer and closer to the point where they were like right beside us and looking at us. And I mean, I don't mean like they were touching us, but they were so close, they were right beside us, and they would just stop and they were just looking at us. And that was kind of creepy. He felt good. The energy coming from his hand, him holding me, felt good, but they didn't. It was just kind of unsettling and like unhappy. They just weren't at peace or something, I guess is the words I would use now. I don't know what I would use then. I don't remember. It's been too long. But we kept going through this crowd, and he ended up stopping. And mind you, early on, it wasn't, maybe 100 around or something before it got much bigger, but he ended up stopping, and I'm not wanting to look at him because it just doesn't feel comfortable. And I keep looking at him, and he stops and points at them, and it says, "They're waiting for you." And he ended up saying, turning from souls to people. And then he says, "Earth souls to help lost Earth souls." And the whole time he's like in front of me, and he's pointing at these, and I'm trying to understand what he's saying, but the whole time I'm getting these feelings from these people of the sadness and uneasiness. And I'm going, why? Why is this? Why am I here? What is all this? Why are you telling me this? And also having the feeling I wanted to get away. I didn't want to be there. And he's kind of quiet for a few moments, and I keep wondering if I wonder if he's like could hear my thoughts, or maybe was I saying it out loud? I don't remember, honestly. But then he stops and looks right at me and says, "I chose you." Still don't know what this means. It's still very confusing and stuff. And he gets up and we start walking again. And it gets so I can't see beyond these people because there's so many here. It's just like a little kid going through a crowd, But then all of a sudden he stops and he looks at me again. He says, "You were there in the beginning." Something about being there in the beginning. You were there in the beginning, and something else. And he turns and we start walking again. And this time, I'll be honest with you, I'm actually kind of getting closer to him because all these are around, and I'm like just kind of looking at the back of his head for quite a while. I don't want to see any of this. I don't know what's going on. And I felt more comfortable being next to him than pulling away from him. It was just, these souls, I'll use that term now, as they're just too close for me, and it was too many things I was feeling, too many things going through me as far as what I was feeling and thinking. And it was like, just kind of like, all right, let me just focus on him. And at some point or another in this walk, I just kind of looked back and I realized the ones who were behind us were lighter in color. And then I just kept looking back, and I didn't realize it early on, but as we passed them, they were brightening up. Past the two of us, they would brighten up. And so then it got to the point where he was having to pull me because I kept looking back. And literally, if they were dark green, they became a lighter green. If they were dark orange, it became a lighter orange. But a lot of them were just becoming more white, not like a bright white, but just an off-white, but lighter. And instead of looking at us, they were interacting with each other. They were looking at each other, and then were like moving on. And so that actually made, that energy felt good. And I was looking back between him and there, and it's just tons of them, and I still can't see anything but these souls or people. And then those behind, because it's just the crowd that's around. And then somewhere in that time frame, when I looked back and I looked forward, I realized the crowd was further away from us. There was still a crowd there, but they were out quite a ways, like dozens of feet away. But they were still looking at us. And then when I looked at him, I realized past him there were individuals walking with us in front of him. And these people were wearing long white robes. And when I tried to look around him or see, basically they were in a V formation. It's like they were dividing the crowd, and they were keeping the crowd up. And then he picked up his pace. We actually started walking a little faster. But they were still there. All these were still there, but it was just these people, and they were evenly spaced out away. So it was like this huge V, and they just, I don't know, just divided the crowd. Whereas before, he was just walking through the crowd, and they would just kind of step aside or step around us and stuff. So during this, it's a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of me trying to figure out what's going on, and there's no scene. It's still like it's nowhere. It's just a vastness, like we're out in space or something, but it didn't look like that. But it wasn't dark. It was just a place. So I'm still kind of watching back and forth, and I look up there at them and going back and forth, and then I feel a stop. We stop walking, and when I look back, the guy's gone. And the whole scene has changed. It's just like all of a sudden he just disappeared and the scene has changed. So it went from this vastness, this nothingness, to a very much an earth type nature scene. It's kind of like would you say like a small opening? I wouldn't even call it a valley. It's a small opening in the woods somewhere where the trees are, several hundred feet away. It's just this big grassy type plain, but the grass is very short. Leaves on the trees, everything's, got like summer colors, greenness going on. And those people that were walking in front of us were now in a circle. And I was outside of the circle, or kind of a ways back, and I'm looking at them. And right now at this time, I can't tell you if they were talking or anything, or making any sounds at the time, but I knew they were making a sound later towards the end of this. But so I'm standing there and I'm looking at them, I'm looking around, still just like being a kid, and I could see right in front of their feet was a ring of stones, and they were in a circle outside this ring of stones, and they were pretty spaced out. I mean, this is a big ring, maybe 25 feet, 30 feet in diameter, and so it's 11 of them spaced all the way around there, and I could see in the center there was a small ring of stones, smaller ring that's maybe, I don't know, 4 feet diameter. I don't know. And once again, I'm kind of looking around, and then all of a sudden I'm standing in the center. They're outside of me, they're around me, and I'm standing in the center. I have no clue how I got moved or anything. It's just like once time, then the next time in another spot. And I'm facing one guy, and this ring is actually like men and women, but they're all white and they're all looking at me, and they're all wearing a metal medallion that's hanging basically between the heart and solar plexus area. So it's kind of like a long chain or a long rope or something, and each one of them sitting there, but they're all just plain white robes. And the direction I'm facing, I'm looking at one particular guy, and as I look around and I look back to him, he's a little closer, and he keeps getting a little closer and a little closer. And as he gets closer to me, I can feel tingling in my hands and my arms. And he gets right up to me, and I could see the medallion because, mind you, I'm a little kid, and when he comes up to me, he's like, the medallion's right where I'm looking at, and pretty good size, baseball size or so, and had 2 rings, just like the rings on the ground. And it was hammered metal. So it wasn't like smooth polish. It looked like a hammered metal, like you would see with something, that's copper or bronze or something like that. But fairly thick too. And anyway, he starts talking, this man starts talking, and he is, asked me to do some kind of movement with my hands. I don't remember much of anything about those hand movements. I don't even know if I did them, to be honest with you, because it was just the tingling in my hands and my arms and stuff. It was just, up through my neck. It was just so much. I was so focused on that, looking at him. And he did that for a little bit, and then he tells me just put my hands off to the side at an angle. Don't hold them straight out, but just hold them down at an angle to my sides. And I started vibrating. I could feel my whole body vibrating. But the thing is, I'm looking at him, and it's like his face and his upper torso is starting to glow. And he keeps glowing and glowing, get to the point where I can't see his face anymore. And the vibration of me gets higher and higher and higher. And he starts backing up. He's still glowing, and I haven't looked at any of the others. I'm just looking at him, and I'm paying attention to what I'm feeling. So I don't know if they were too or not, but he's backing up, and I realize that they're humming. I don't know if they've been doing it the whole time, but it's like the Om kind of humming, and it was just steady. It was steady going on through during this time, or during that few moments, or whatever time period it was. And I'm vibrating more and more and more, and he's backing up. And then there was this jolt of energy that I mean, literally, felt it come down and hit me, and like my whole body jumped. And I don't know if anybody who's watching this has ever been like shocked, like through some wire or something. It's like that quick where your whole body jumps, and you don't have a no chance to react. It's just immediate, and it's like I went out, like I wasn't. Um, like I wasn't present there. Everything was kind of gone for a moment. And then when I came back, so to speak, I don't even like really saying that, but it's really kind of how it was. I was knocked out or something, but not knocked out because I'm still standing up. But the energy and the vibration just is crazy high. And when my focus, I guess, when I kind of came back to focus, they were walking away from me, but yet still walking, but in a smaller ring as a group, but walking away. And to the point that the ones furthest behind me were already past me at that time. And they weren't walking fast. They were just kind of this nice, slow, steady walk. And I just remember, it's like, well, how long was I out? What happened? And I watched them just keep walking. I'm still vibrating and tingling and looking around, and it seemed like I looked down at my feet, and then I looked back up, and I'm back in that vastness. The whole nature scene is gone again. And that guy is standing in front of me again, the one that was pulling me by the hand. But he's kneeling down in front of me, as if he's been standing there or been kneeling there for this whole time or something. And he said something like, "It's time for you to go back." And I didn't have any problem with going back. I was just it's like I was more concerned about what they were wanting me to do. It was this feeling, this knowing of wanting me to do something. And just like earlier when he spoke to me, I didn't know if I was saying this out loud or if he was just getting my thoughts. Because he would pause and he'd look at me and he says, "You can do this. You can do it." And I'm like, "Do what?" I'm literally going, "Do what? What are you talking about?" And it's just like he's just sitting there. We're just there for a few minutes, and he's just kind of like repeating this. "You can do this. You can do it. And you've got to go back. It's time to go back." And being as a kid, I wanted to go back. I mean, you got family. You don't know anybody else but family at that age, and except for other little kids. But your life is your family, your parents and stuff. So, but it was just other side of me. It was like, it was like the kid not thinking. It was that other side of me is going, "I don't know if I can do this," but I wasn't even certain what it was. I still didn't. But it was that two sides of me going like, "Yeah, I want to go back." And the other side going, but it didn't feel like the kid. It didn't feel like me, essentially. So then within a moment after that or so, I was back in the car. I was waking up in the car. And my parents took me. We were just at the little small town doctor. We didn't go to the emergency room. He acted like the emergency room, essentially. We just would pull into the back of the doctor's office and go in this one door. And anyway, got all checked out. This is summer evening, and it was just getting dark kind of time frame. And he checked me out, and then remember the door was on the back side of the building. It was like two or three concrete steps, and he just there was like, "You go sit there and we'll talk to your parents." And so anyway, he was talking to them, but I was just sitting there, and I was very much out of it. And the feelings were just, it was kind of crazy. But to be honest with you, the feelings weren't about the NDE. The feelings were just the whole experience of falling and stuff. And all I had was a knot on my head. I didn't break anything. I didn't cut my skin. It just, I fell 9 feet on concrete and walked away. It's just outside of what they thought. It just knocked me out. And obviously through the ND, it was a little more than that.
Right.
That what happened, but so overall, I was fine. And this whole experience, I forgot it until I went into a hypnotherapy session, and with the idea of addressing claustrophobia that was affecting flying. So it's like, not really the fear of flying, but fear of being in that cabin and flying. And we never touched any of that. It just, when the hypnotherapy session started, all the ND just started pouring out. I mean, the therapist was wonderful, and she was trying to guide me into the claustrophobia situation, and I just started talking about all this other. So she told me afterwards, she was like, I just followed it. She said, I just ran with it and see what happened. And she also told me, so when that jolt of energy hit, she said, did you hear me jump back? And I said, no, I didn't hear anything. She said, you must have came off the table 2 inches. She said, it scared me. She said, I didn't, your whole body jolted. And, so I was like, oh, I felt it again. And she said, yeah, I don't know what happened, but you jolted and jumped, and your body went up, and I'm laying on a massage table, so anyway, that's my story. I am 55 now, so that was 50 years ago this past summer.
It's an amazing story. Later, you discovered who that person was. So can you tell us who that person was that you were with during this experience?
Yes, it was later. Obviously after the hypnotherapy session, and where everything was, all the images and everything are full back in my mind now. But I was watching something online about this young artist who did something, this huge painting, and has gotten so much notoriety about it. And I can never get the name right, but
It's a hard
Akain
one.
Kramerick, and
Akiana, yeah.
huh?
Is it Akiana Kumeric or I believe?
It could be. I don't know if I'm even saying it right. I'm just based off of reading it, But it was her painting of Prince of Peace. And when I saw that painting, I was like, holy crap, that's him. I mean, literally, it was just like, it just stopped me in my tracks. And it's like, that's the guy. So Jesus is, what we're talking about. And it's one of those things that from a Baptist community, all the pictures of Jesus are, he's white and he's got long hair, and this is not what he looked like to me. I mean, he was definitely what I would consider maybe Middle Eastern, dark hair, dark complexion. I wouldn't even say he was even like slender, skinny. He was kind of a stocky kind of a person. But when I saw that painting, and she painted him because that's who came to her, was that image, that, and it was just, it was just like, oh my God, that's who it was. It was just immediately, as soon as I saw it. So yeah, that's who it was.
I find it interesting that you felt comfort from Jesus, but you were nervous throughout the near death experience. And most people talk about, so much love and they feel so good. Do you have an idea of why you were still nervous while you were there?
This is something I've sat back with, and had many discussions over. And I don't know if it was the nervousness was from him or all the emotions I was feeling from them, from all the other souls. In the beginning, it was definitely a nervousness, but it was such calmness coming through my left hand. But it was, it was as if just like us as humans, we fight the obvious. Me looking back, I won't go back the other way, which is where meaning in this life and this experience is where we actually experience the fear. We end up carrying the sadness and things from what happens in this life. And so to answer your question is, maybe in that, and maybe as being a child, or not understanding, but he was giving me the sense of peace, the sense of calmness. But I was pulling back to where there's more fear, the fear of the falling and all that. And so I can't say that. And in other talks, I've had people ask kind of similar questions or after the fact. And honestly, I didn't really have an answer, but the more I've processed this over time, the more I've sat with it, it's just kind of the example of us, if we would surrender that way. In other words, if I'd surrendered to it and walked with him and stood beside him, it would have been all peace and, calmness. But we pull back to this other side. We pull back to the other way. And then, shortly after that is when all the souls were coming up, and they were all, some form or another, just like every human out here is carrying some form of burden. As Jesus would say, you were never meant to carry these burdens. They're carrying some pain, some fear, some worry. So I think a lot of that amnesia was our human experiences and what they've carried from their experiences, not him. So there was just so much of another environment. But yeah, I've heard, I've seen, I haven't watched a lot of NDE stories or podcasts, but I do hear where some were all enveloped in the light. But I haven't really heard many that were like this, where they've got all these others, coming at them.
To me, what I took from this is that these souls were changing colors. So to me, it almost sounded like as you passed them, you were healing them. And that was what it was representing. I'm sure you've thought a lot about this. What do you think?
I agree with you. I'm sure as the kid at the time, I didn't, but once again, as I've sat with it and I've once again had these discussions, it does come back to that very thing. Is they're releasing what's kept them in that state, and then they're able to just be, to live and be free. But yeah, I agree with you. It's healing. It was, some form of healing that they were going through, some form of releasing that allowed them to be.
And it said you were, or he said, you were helping lost souls. So do you think that was referring to people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the other thing is, if he'd placed images of, or they've been actually images of people, actual people, wearing clothes and hair and everything. Once again, as humans, we have a tendency to look at what the person's wearing. Are they wearing glasses? Are they wearing, what color shirt? Da da da. How are they built? Are they smiling? Are they angry? And we get tied into that versus seeing them. And I believe that by just showing us souls, I couldn't make any judgments. I couldn't start thinking about, oh, why would somebody wear that? Or, what happened to them? Or, why they walk that way. Just, which are all just distractions from the truth, that we are souls, and it shouldn't be any judgment. It shouldn't be any question. Just, we're all dealing with something and we need help. It's too easy for us to judge.
When you were in the circle, to me, my interpretation was they were either acknowledging that you were a healer or they were gifting that to you. Do you think it was one of those things or something else?
Or maybe both.
Mm-hmm.
but definitely that jolt of energy, that was something. That was, I don't know what that was, but it was something. It was like a light, because now that when I think about it, it was, it was like the energy came down, but everything was kind of bright just for that instant. So I guess to answer your question, why not? Why not gifting me something, or maybe better yet, activating what's already there?
The other thing I thought was really interesting is Jesus said a couple of things to you. One was, I choose you. And the other was, you were there at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that means?
When I first realized who it was, going back to the beginning just made me think about like his time on earth here. And so 2,000 years ago, that was where my initial thoughts were. It's like that was the beginning. But as I've thought about it more over time, over the last handful of years, few years, whatever, the beginning goes beyond that. It's honestly, I believe all of us were there in the beginning, because we all have souls. We're all fragments. We're all pieces of that light of the oneness. So now, I guess to answer your question, now what I believe it means is it was more like a reminder, trying to remind me. It's like, and it's part of what the work I do now is try to help people remember who they are. We're all part of that oneness. We all have that healing. We all are that light. So I think it was just, at this time, it feels like he was just trying to remind me, help me to remember that it's not this, it's not just this life, not this 5-year-old kid or 55-year-old man. We've always been there. We've been through numerous journeys and, numerous adventures and what have you. So yeah, it's kind of like a reminder.
It must have been a huge shock when you found out you had a near-death experience. So what was that like, and how did it change you and change your faith? Just change the person you are?
Actually, it wasn't a shock. It actually was very, I don't want to say it. It was very, not really relieving or comforting. It was just, I knew there was something else. It was just like a lot of people that get into energy work or feels energy, a lot of us feel it all our lives, and we just don't know what to do or what to say about it and stuff, or what to think about it. So for me, it was, validating. So it wasn't a shock. But here's the other part is, I've been doing energy work before I ever, had the hypnotherapy session. And, I've worked with different things, but it kept kind of going back to soul work and getting people to see their truth. So when this came through, when this was shown to me, it was like I was really being validated. It was validating that I was on the right path. So it wasn't a shock. It actually felt good. It's like, okay, all right, maybe this is the right direction. I don't know about most people, but when it comes to energy work and stuff, things are constantly changing. So it's like, am I doing, is this what I'm doing? Or, what is this? So.
And speaking of that, I want to talk about your energy work. We're going to go ahead and take that into part 2. And for those of you listening, remember that we're actually going to get a healing from Roland. So I think it's going to be a really neat episode coming up. Thanks so much for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesh. That was part 1. Make sure to listen to part 2. And if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more episodes.